Before we begin, please be aware that this podcast contains discussion of sensitive topics, such as abuse of minors, of vulnerable adults, and safeguarding practices. Some content may be distressing or triggering for listeners. This program is intended for an adult audience. If you or someone you know is affected by these issues, we encourage you to seek support from a trusted professional or a local support service. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the 12th episode of Inside Safeguarding, the official podcast of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. From Rome, I'm William Roberts from the Commission's communications team. Each month we bring you a reflective look at the Commission's work, conversations on safeguarding as they evolve, and a deeper insight into the wider challenges facing the Church today. This month, two stories lead. The Holy See has published revised statutes for the Commission, approved by Pope Leo XIV and entering a 3-year trial period, and the Commission held its first in-person meeting with Ending Clergy Abuse. More on that later. We also hear from Myanmar, Tanzania, and a global summit on child protection. We begin with the statutes. More than a decade after the Commission's founding document was first issued, the Holy See has published a revised version, replacing the original 2015 statutes issued under Pope Francis. The revision was needed to bring the Commission into alignment with the restructured Roman Curia set out in the Apostolic Constitution Predicate Evangelium. Pope Leo XIV approved the new statutes on the 20th of May by means of a Rescriptum ex Audientia Santissimi, and they will be implemented on a trial basis for 3 years. The revision process began in 2022 and involved consultation with the Secretariat of State and several dicasteries. The final draft was approved by our previous president, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, in May 2025, before being presented to Pope Leo XIV and the Secretariat of State. The Pope signalled his support for an expanded mandate at the Commission's plenary assembly in March of this year. Speaking on publication, Commission President Archbishop Thibault Verny said, "The statutes mark an important step in deepening our shared responsibility to protect and care for the most vulnerable. They reflect listening to victims and survivors, to safeguarding experts, and to the experience of local churches, and reaffirm that safeguarding remains a central priority." The revised text clarifies the Commission's role as one of guidance rather than governance. The Commission continues to advise the Holy Father on the protection of minors and vulnerable adults, working alongside the Dicastery of the Doctrine of Faith on safeguarding methodologies, the annual report, and formation programs. The statutes reinforce support for local churches in developing accessible reporting systems and listening centres for victims and survivors, confirm the Commission's responsibility for an annual report on church safeguarding policies, and introduce a provision allowing the Commission, in cases of repeated violations or serious shortcomings, to submit assessments directly to the competent dicastery. Moving on. On the 15th and 16th of June, the Commission held its first in-person meeting with Ending Clergy Abuse, also known as ECHA, an international advocacy organisation working across 14 countries on 5 continents. The meeting, held at Palazzo Maffei in Rome, was proposed by Pope Leo XIV following his own meeting with the ECHA board in October 2025 and conducted under the name Rome Safeguarding Dialogues through a trauma-informed approach. Opening the meeting, Archbishop Verny reaffirmed the Church's duty to listen to victims and survivors, stressing it must be an active exercise with concrete outcomes to the credible. ECHA Board President Gemma Hickey called for a spirit of curiosity, kindness, and hope, underscoring a shared responsibility to protect children and people in situations of vulnerability. Discussions focused on victims' rights, institutional responsibility, justice, and mandatory safeguarding principles grounded in lived experience. The Commission presented its newly revised statutes and outlined the annual report methodology. ECHA called for the adoption of a universal zero-tolerance canon law on clergy abuse, modelled on existing Vatican-approved norms in the United States. Participants also addressed the need to expand safeguarding beyond minors to include persons in situations of vulnerability more broadly, and identified cultural barriers, uneven implementation, and resource constraints as key challenges. The meeting concluded with agreed next steps on canon law proposals, expanded victim-survivor engagement, and ongoing collaboration mechanisms. Earlier this month, on the 12th of June, the Commission took part in 2 sessions at the Conrad Hilton Foundation's Catholic Sisters Initiative, convening in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Commission Secretary Monsignor Ali Herrera joined a panel on fostering a safeguarding culture across the Church, while regional expert Claudia Giampietro presented joint research with the International Union of Superiors General and the Centre for Applied Research in the Apostolate on good practices in safeguarding among women religious. In April, the Commission supported a Training of Trainers program for the Catholic Church in Myanmar, delivered online in partnership with the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Myanmar. More than 80 clergy, religious, and church personnel participated, drawn from all 17 dioceses, in a national context shaped by conflict, displacement, and the aftermath of the February 2021 coup. The program covered shared safeguarding language, abuse prevention methodology, and the Universal Guidelines framework, and was followed by strongly positive feedback from participants. Also this month, the Commission's regional expert for Africa, Brother Fortune Chakasara, submitted a report on the implications of the reduction of USAID funding for child-focused programs across the continent. He argues the transition should prompt a deeper reckoning with how child protection systems are financed and governed, with shared responsibility falling on donors, national governments, and church institutions alike. For the Church, he identified priorities including community-based child protection networks, diocesan safeguarding structures, trauma-informed pastoral care, and local resource mobilization. And finally this month, Commission staff members Emma McCarthy and Serena Viti attended the Global Summit 2026, Fostering Hope for Children, held from the 3rd to the 5th of June on behalf of the Commission's Online Abuse Study Group. The summit brought together academic, faith-based, and non-governmental partners to discuss child well-being and protection. Commission staff engaged with partners on the prevention of technology-facilitated abuse, reflecting the growing relevance of safeguarding in digital environments. You're listening to Inside Safeguarding. In our next segment, I'll be speaking with Claudia Giampietro, our regional expert for Europe, about the publication of the Commission's new statutes. I'm William Roberts. Thank you for joining me. Welcome back to Inside Safeguarding. In this segment, I'm joined by Claudia Giampietro, a canon lawyer and intercultural mediator who serves as the Commission's regional expert for Europe. Claudia has been closely involved in the Commission's work across the European region, and today I'm speaking to her about the publication of the Commission's new statutes. Claudia, thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Inside Safeguarding.
Hi, William. Thank you.
Now let's jump straight into this matter. The new statutes replace those from 2015 and have been over a decade in the making. As someone who works within the Commission's legal and canonical framework, what do you see as the most significant shift in how the document defines the Commission's mandate?
I think it is very important to understand where the statutes come from, so the history of the Commission, starting with the establishment of the Commission in 2014, and then from 2015 we had the first statutes, of course on a trial period, and we have a time where the statutes were tried and were studied, and therefore it was necessary to come to a stage where actually we have now the new statutes approved and promulgated by Pope Leo on 20th of May of this year. And looking at the context, we have to understand also that canonically speaking, they have to be understood as, I would say, a structure in concentric circles. And the innermost one would be the one where the statutes are. So there is a larger frame where we have the universal law of the Church. So the canon law, we are looking, so this system. And then we have also the Predicate Evangelium, the Constitution, Apostolic Constitution of 2022, and this already placed the Commission within the Roman Curia, within the dicastery of the doctrine of the faith. So I think it is important to understand also the perspective where we have the local churches working together in communion with the global church, and therefore there is a connection, and we look at the work of the Roman Curia as a bridge in between this and not as being an obstacle. No? So the Commission in this aspect, I think with the Statutes, it is reinforced in the position of advice to the Holy Father, because already in Predicate Evangelium we have the clarification that the Commission has its own president and reports to the Holy Father, even if it is within the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. And it is an essential aspect to understand the role of the advisory body, because it doesn't undermine. It is not like we are saying that the Commission doesn't have teeth to do something. It is different compared to the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, where we have disciplinary role, and the Commission doesn't hand down the sanctions. And it is, however, important because this role of advisory body means that it goes to the local churches. It helps through the role of updating or even helping local churches to build their guidelines, as well as reporting annually to the annual report that now is recognized within the statutes as a statutory tool. And therefore, I believe that in this way, the Commission is reinvigorated in its role, and the advice comes through the Commission members, and the members express themselves in a collegial way. So whenever we want to understand the categories, we go back to the Code of Canon Law. So here we find what it means, the power of governance, that the Commission doesn't have, in a sense that the power of governance is held by the bishop, and therefore is enacted in the local realities. And the Commission is accompanying to implement this, and looking at what are the realities, the different imbalances that we find in the role of prevention, for example, information. And this is essential. And I think it is really the way the statutes acknowledge this, and they are expressed synodally by the members when they gather in the plenary assembly twice a year. And therefore is also a way of expressing in a synodal way and convey to the Holy Father the most important decisions that affect the Church globally in matters of safeguarding.
The statutes describe the Commission's role as one of guidance rather than governance, while also introducing new mechanisms for flagging repeated failures by local churches to the relevant dicasteries. In your opinion, from a canonical perspective, how meaningful is that distinction in practice?
It is essential because it is, as I mentioned earlier, an accompaniment, a guidance. So it's exactly seeing where things are not working. So what the Commission does through the annual report is telling the truth of the situations, and therefore understanding where to bring these complaints, the situations that actually are not working. So sometimes people are lacking the knowledge about what to do. So the Commission can help those who recur to the Commission to understand where to go, to which dicastery, because the dicastery holds the competence, and therefore the Commission can support and can accompany these situations.
Now, your work within the Commission has a specifically European dimension. How does the experience of European churches, where arguably the crisis has been most publicly documented, inform the way the new statutes were shaped? And where do you see the greatest gaps still remaining?
I believe the European context, and particularly I would say also the understanding of the dimension of the Holy See, the working methods of the Holy See, because we see in the statutes also the collaboration with dicastery is underlined. And this networking attitude, it's proper also of the churches locally in Europe, but also I would say in the Roman Curia. And therefore also the role of the Secretariat of State is important, because there is a conversation now with the Secretariat of State prior to the publication of the annual report. And I see this as a mature way of expressing what safeguarding is and how it is working locally, brought to the global reality and dimension, and therefore also going back again to the local. So there is I would say, a circle of harmony in this work. So, and this would reflect what is being carried out in the local churches, and not just by the bishops' conferences, but also by religious. In fact, the Commission is working more and more with religious conferences and as well as with religious institutes. And we are doing, I think, our work is to improve also the mutual collaboration, because without these mutual collaborations, it is impossible to understand and to see this as embodied, as the safeguarding that we as apostolate have to carry it out in our realities. So I believe it is like a mosaic, I would say. So there is a piece that is coming of learning from each local realities, from the different investigations, from the independent investigations carried out also by the local churches. So we are trying to convey this understanding, this knowledge, the good practices that already are in place, and not just in Europe, but I would say also what I see with my colleagues around the world. It is something that is translated as well in the work, canonically speaking, also with canon law and in knowledge, but also with the understanding that it is an experimentum, so it is a work in progress. So we will have to see what works and what can be improved in the years to come. We have 3 years since the promulgation with the audienza to the Holy Father. So this we will something that we will see in the future.
And final question, Claudia. The Commission was once seen as an independent body, whilst now it's very much integrated into the Roman Curia with these new statutes. Does this undermine the Commission's independence in any way of evaluation and action?
No, I believe it is actually also a way to live the independence, but in a connection, also in dialogue, because it doesn't really deprive the Commission of the way of looking objectively, of examining, of reporting. There is a wise accompaniment, I would say. It is not like becoming blind, or as sometimes people would have also the doubt, is the Commission working as without proper tools to address this? But we have, through the years, through the history, looking at the Commission and what has achieved so far, it is evident that there is an awareness and also a way of living the independence in also in truth, in understanding what the reparations that are have to be put in place, because one essential element of the statutes also is again underlining how we accompany also and with great care and dignity victims and survivors. So the role of listening to them, their voice is acknowledged within the statutes and brought to again to the role of listening with care, with your heart. So it is again, I think, reinforced, and it is not lacking in the independence.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us today, Claudia, and for providing these valuable insights here on Inside Safeguarding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Willie.
And that brings us to the end of this 12th episode of Inside Safeguarding. Over the course of each month, we'll continue to follow the Commission's work, speak to those engaged in safeguarding on the ground, and take time to reflect on the wider journey towards accountability and change. If you'd like to read more about the topics discussed today, or explore the Commission's latest articles and resources in full, you can visit us at tutelaminorum.va. You can also subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where future episodes will be published regularly. Thank you for listening, and for taking the time to stay connected to these conversations. I'm William Roberts. Until next time.